Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Suzanne and Sarah Real Estate Investing Podcast morning wake up version. We are both freshly out of bed, and we love you all so much that we are doing this fresh-faced and raw. We both really literally just woke up and we were like, we got to get this podcast done. So let's do it. So you get to see us in our beautiful morning faces and voices and vibes.
That's exactly right. We keep it real here, and you guys know that. We were just that busy this week. Just turn around and squeeze it in when we can. Anyways, we're glad you're here. As if you're listening to the Suzanne and Sarah Real Estate Investing Podcast, this is for you if you're a seasoned investor, a first-time home buyer, or really just real estate curious. So today, like every week, we've got stories, we've got strategy, and we've got insights to share with you.
Yes. And also just a quick personal update. We are in two different locations. We're recording from our homes because it's 7 a.m. But if you can see my background, those are not palm trees. Those are pine trees. So I am back on U.S. soil, back in La Pine, Oregon, Central Oregon, and back here after a few months of working remotely. So yeah, adjusting to new temperatures, although yesterday was 75, so I was feeling very comfortable. And I'm excited to be reunited and supercharged with Sarah because we've got a summer full of some really big and exciting moves and creative deals and meaningful connections with our clients and listeners. So yeah, just very excited to be back and in the saddle again and back in Central Oregon.
Woohoo! I couldn't be more excited, that's for sure. And yeah, I thought we were going to be recording this podcast this week sitting next to each other, but such is life. Here we are. You'll see a lot more of us sitting next to each other if you tune in on the video version of this in the coming weeks. So let's get started with our market and business update. And I like to let Suzanne lead the gate on this one.
So for market update, if you follow us on social, which you should at Best Life Bend and at Suzanne Rhodes Moore, you will see that we just posted about Bend's market stats updates from March. So it's always 1 month lagging, where we look at the numbers and analyze the market and make our predictions for the upcoming month, quarter, year. And the short story is that the market is stable. It's growing like we would expect in spring. However, we're not seeing the huge spikes that we saw this time last year. Where we are seeing increases, significant increases, is days on market. So what does that mean? It means some push-pull tension happening right now because there's some unsettled energy in our country, in the world, and that gets reflected in markets, as we saw last week with the stock market, as we are seeing with the real estate market in Bend and beyond, which we'll talk about as well. There's some hesitation on both parts because things are not totally settled and may not be. But what we do see is a lot of COVID sellers wanting to sell. And when I say COVID sellers, those are folks that bought about 5 years ago, which is also about the average amount of time that someone owns a house, 5 years. Yeah, so sellers want to sell, but buyers still want lower rates and prices that give them monthly payments that are affordable in an uncertain time. As I said, days on market are up, and we are seeing increases year over year in most of the interesting statistics like prices and price per square foot. So lots of interesting nuggets in our post about the market stats. If you want to check that out, we'll link that in the show notes.
Yeah, sellers want to sell and buyers want to buy, but things just take a little bit of a different course these days. And just yesterday, we had some of those buyers who wanted to buy, but they didn't think they could. These were those buyers a few weeks ago that I told you guys came to me and said, Sarah, we don't really like real estate agents and we don't think we can afford a house in Bend. And I was like, cool, challenge done. And 7 weeks later, AKA yesterday, they were closing on the cutest house that I think I've seen in a long time for only $550,000, which was $100,000 less than these folks were pre-qualified for. So I know I changed their mind about being able to afford a home in Bend. And I'm pretty sure these folks like realtors now because they know us truly. So total win across the board there. I just love the opportunity to help people make a positive mindset shift. And I actually had this conversation with them yesterday. I was like, listen, like you might have been the fastest primary home buyer turnaround that we have yet. But I also think that you had the biggest mindset shift that I've ever had to help transition. And they agreed. They stopped by the office yesterday to pick up their key and take some cute pictures and get a closing gift from us, which is a whole other story that we can go into another day. But that was a fun one.
So good. And they sent the cutest photo yesterday of their dog just like running in the backyard. And those are the heartwarming moments for us as realtors too, because it shows how excited the whole family is about having their home. And we know how important that is. Okay, on to the creative finance condo deal. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, this one has been a wild ride. We're still not done. And the latest is that our buyers did engage the services of a really smart, astute attorney who was like, y'all just need to use the standard forms. Don't waste your money or my time, but I'll write up some language for an addendum that protects you, my client, the seller, on some of the terms that the forms do not address or that they don't address, specifically. So we got that all done and sent over to the buyers. And guess what? The buyers bailed. And not totally surprised. After some long conversations yesterday with the buyer's agent and checking to make sure that the conversations were had about, like, when an attorney is writing language, who are they writing it for? Their client. Who is it going to protect? Their client. In this case, their client was our seller. However, as we know, especially in situations like these where we're doing these creative deals and things are not set in stone in a boilerplate contract, all of those terms are negotiable. And that was my conversation yesterday, was like, okay, your buyers don't like what's in here because they don't feel like it protects them because the seller's attorney wrote it. What do your buyers want? They don't have an answer for that. Okay, do they want to get an answer for that? No, they don't want to pay an attorney. They just want your client's attorney to write verbiage that protects the buyer. Well, okay, that's where we're at. Essentially, these buyers are not very savvy in real estate investing on the creative side. And that's okay. Not everybody is. And these kinds of creative deals are not for everybody. And it is a measure of risk and reward. And we are moving on. The property is already back on the market officially. We've also reached out to our creative financing expert that we work with and pitched the deal to him because he's connected with a lot of investors who are looking for this kind of deal all the time and are not scared of attorney addendums and are also willing to negotiate. So long story, we're back on market. Our sellers are so awesome. And they're just like, yeah, that's fine. Let's find a buyer who we actually want to do this with. So there we go.
I love it. Yep. And we know we can make it through the inspection period on that one. So we know it's not a property issue. It's a people issue in this case. And it's just, they're a dime a dozen out there. So let's find another one. Anyways, moving on, we've got some West Side buyers that we're a week out from closing with them on the least expensive house on the West Side. If you know us, you know that we are total advocates for buying the ugliest house on the street. In this case, we're buying the ugliest house on the West Side of Bend. And I think it will pay off for them. This is a conscious 3 to 5 year live-in flip. These folks come from a savvy real estate investing family, but they themselves are pretty inexperienced and just figuring out that maybe they should join the party. And this one has just been so fun because their family is so cute and so supportive. On their inspection day, the entire clan showed up. We had the father, the two sisters, the partners of the sisters, and there were lots of opinions in the room, which we typically like to avoid in the inspection phase, having too many cooks in the kitchen. But in this case, it was all right. It paid off. The patriarch from the get-go said, this is a solid house. We just have to figure out how to make it work for you guys. And they've just been in the process of building their construction team. They want to be their own general contractors. So we've been helping connect them with a bunch of subs and try and do it on a budget as much as possible. And we will be there to cheer them on while they're doing it and hopefully stay in touch with them long enough to help them graduate up when it's time to cash out on that semi-long-term live-in flip. So that's been a fun one.
So good. All right. And then finally, our 1031 contingent buyer who has a duplex for sale just outside of the Portland area shared that the Portland market feels oddly sluggish. So that actually came from the realtor who's representing the sale of that duplex. And she's also a great friend of ours and someone that we referred to this client. And it's really helpful for us to hear how the market is doing in other parts of Oregon, the other parts of the country, because as I said earlier with the market update, things are in flux and we're all humans, right? So we all respond to our conditions and that's what we see reflected in the market. And essentially we're seeing much the same conditions in Central Oregon where if a property is not priced aggressively, it's not selling quickly. And we also heard a really interesting example that I want to share here from our principal broker this week. She was telling us about 3 condos that are for sale in Sun River. So Sun River is a little bit south of Bend. It's a resort community, very much a vacation rental or second home market. So there's this condo unit or this condo complex, and there are 3 units for sale. 2 of them are over $1 million. One priced at $895, $200,000 lower than the other 2 condos. She represented a buyer who was like, I want the one that's $895 and I'm willing to pay more than $200,000 over asking price to get the one that's priced well.
And I think it was a cash offer too, Suzanne.
It was a cash offer. And guess what? He didn't get it. You know why? Because someone else was willing to pay even more than $200,000 over asking price. So what does that mean? That means that this condo that was priced at $895 went for over $1.1 million, and they had 5 offers. At least one was cash, and it sold for more than the other 2 that were priced at $1.095 million. So what does that tell you, sellers? I hope you take away from that pricing aggressively can attract the kind of activity and offers and choices that you really want, that you remember from the COVID days, and give you the opportunity to get offers that are coming in way over asking. And so just please take that example as what can really make things work in this market where people are feeling like they want to get a good deal.
I appreciate you telling that story. And I also appreciate the language and perspective that you just put to that pricing strategy, which was attracting the number of offers and the type of activity that you are after versus we have these conversations with sellers. And sometimes the perception is that instead you're creating competition unnecessarily, or you're doing something negative. A lot of times sellers are like, I think that's not like a nice strategy because we're essentially like pitting people against each other. And I don't know, does that align with your goals? I disagree. So I think it's really important to use the right language around that and make sure that the mindset is correct in terms of looking at the different pricing strategies that are out there. So want to take the opportunity to dive a little bit more into what a contingent offer is this week, since we've been sitting with a buyer who is under contract with a contingent property for sale, and just dig into that a little bit deeper, because it's somewhat of a complicated situation for people who don't do this a lot. And a lot of times sellers and or buyers will come to us and say, what should I do first? Should I buy first or should I sell first? All that being said, I wanted to take the opportunity this week to talk to you guys a little bit more about what contingent offers mean. We've been sitting with this buyer who's a 1031 exchange contingent buyer for the past few weeks. And I don't know, maybe you know what that is, maybe you don't, but if you don't, I think it's really important to understand what contingent offers are and some details around that. What is a contingent offer? It's really when a buyer makes an offer to purchase a property and the sale of it is dependent on a specific condition being met. And most commonly, and what we're talking about today, that means the successful sale of their current home or investment property. And there's a couple different reasons why people do this, right? It's because in this case, they have an investment property that they want to 1031 exchange the funds from that relinquished sale into a new investment property, so they do not need to pay those capital gains taxes right away. Or in the case of primary home buyers, they actually have to sell their home, or they think they have to sell their home in order to have the funds in order to pay for the next home. So in this case, and in general, it means we'll buy your property if you're a buyer, but only if we're able to close on ours first. So what this does is it allows you to go home shopping first, pick out your home, but yeah, you got to sell your home in order to buy that one. These contingencies save your and protect your earnest money, but there's lots of pros and cons to them. So we're going to talk about when it makes sense and when it might not make sense.
Yes. So contingent offers makes the most sense in markets that are not crazy town like COVID. So I bet you like almost zero contingent offers got accepted during COVID because sellers were like, why would I take my property off the market or even list it as active with contingency if I can get a bazillion other offers from people that don't have contingencies, right? So it makes sense in markets that are in flux or that are starting to soften, or where it's just not like a seller's market. It's maybe more balanced, and where sellers may be more open to working with buyers who have something to sell in order to get into that particular home. So they're ideal for a seller if the buyer's home is already listed, or even better, under contract with somebody else. So meaning that the buyer's property that has to sell is already pending. That's the best case scenario for a seller looking at a contingent offer. Also, they are ideal when the buyer is moving equity from one property to another in the case of a 1031 exchange, like our buyer that we're talking about with this particular situation. And also really helpful if a seller is not in a rush, if they're just like, yeah, cool. It's not a contingent offer on a contingent offer on a contingent offer, which gets to be totally crazy. But yeah, if a seller's just, I got a few months, or I'm not really in a hurry, and they value a qualified, committed buyer over speed to close. So for sellers, it can definitely work if the contingent property is well positioned to sell, meaning priced right, like we just talked about, if it's in good condition, if it's actively on the market in a market that is doing well, and also if the offer includes strong earnest money, because that's essentially the skin in the game and the proof of commitment from the buyer that they're going to perform. And finally, it can work for sellers if the buyers are well qualified. So that can be their financing, it can be their credit worthiness. There's a lot of other factors that can play into that. But yeah, that's how it can work for sellers and buyers. But what are the risks, Sarah?
Yeah.
Talk about the risks.
Exactly. Where there's pros, there's definitely cons, and there's ways to mitigate those cons too. So the big risk is uncertainty. You really just don't know if the buyer's property is going to sell or if the buyer is going to perform. The deal can still fall through, and that really does limit a seller's ability to confidently move forward with their own purchase, right? Like they're just in limbo until I don't know, until they're not, right? So different ways to mitigate this are including very specific deadlines and contingency removal dates. And these are things that go into the initial contract, depending on the seller's motivations. It's whatever date you want, but typically it's 2 to 4 weeks that one would give a buyer in order to get their contingent property under contract, in order to remove their contingency temporarily and move forward. They can require the buyer's home to be actively listed versus just, oh, we're going to be listing soon. In most cases with contingent offers, if the buyer's relinquished property is not already under contract, the property that they are buying to replace it, the contingent property, will go into what's called bumpable status. It goes from active to what's called pending with contingency, or bumpable buyer status, meaning that it's still showing as active on the MLS, but it shows that there is an accepted offer. And what that means is that they can still show the home and still consider other offers. But essentially, if they receive another offer, that they have to give the buyer what's basically first right of refusal to remove their contingency and decide to move forward. Or if they can't move forward, then they have to terminate their agreement at that time, so the seller can accept an offer that they want to move forward with. The other thing is just communication is key in these situations. Of course, like just regular updates, keeping each other informed about showings and offers and feedback on the contingent property go a long way in these situations.
Okay, sorry, hang on.
You're good.
Multitasking. All right. So one thing that happens during contingent offers is sometimes things don't go according to the original plan, like in the case of our buyer, where we had to extend the contingency timeline because he hasn't gotten any offers on his property in Portland that he needs to sell in order to buy his property in Bend. We know that happens, timelines shift, and if a buyer needs more time, it's really important for us as real estate agents to be proactive and have consistent communication with both agents, right? Like we're the middleman, essentially dealing with the agent that's trying to sell the relinquished property and the agent that's trying to sell the property that our buyers want to buy. A reasonable extension to request is generally like a week to 2 weeks, depending on the situation, but it's really crucial to frame the request with context, like what progress has been made, what's the activity been like, are there any buyers circling, what other properties that are similar have sold in the area, and why the extension is likely to lead to a successful closing. For example, with our 1031 buyer, he got under contract super fast. Like I think we met him and then 72 hours later we had him under contract. And he completed his due diligence early, so he paid for an inspection, but the market for his Portland duplex is just moving slow. And so we've shifted gears from speed to being really strategic and keeping the listing agent in Bend updated with all the info from the listing agent in Portland, and really creating an environment of trust, positioning our buyer as someone who is worth waiting for. So let's talk about some actionable tips, Sarah, that other agents can take away from this deep dive into contingent offers.
Totally. Yeah. So for buyers, we've already touched on this a little bit, but just to drive it home, communicate early and often. Have your current property priced right from the get-go and ready to go. Moving fast is a good thing, but just also making sure that we're making thoughtful and strategic decisions matters as well.
For sure. And for sellers, understand the buyer's position, and it's okay to ask for regular updates so that you can stay informed and decide if you're willing to wait it out or if you just are ready to put it back on the market and try to attract another buyer.
Yeah. And then for us as agents and for you as agents listening out there, negotiating on behalf of your buyers with contingent offers, just really staying in tune with making sure that you have regular calendar updates for timing and communicating these updates, that the tone that we take when communicating with the other agent on the other side is one of gratitude and good nature and goodwill and just being transparent about everything. Like, it's okay to admit that things aren't going well on the other side necessarily. But again, like Suzanne mentioned before, just advocating for your particular client and making it known that they are worthy and qualified and worth waiting around for as long as it works for the seller. Cool. Moving on to our client and industry PSA. I'm going to handle our industry PSA for fellow agents today. And it's really just to discuss that real estate is a game of precision. We really need to know from our own life experiences and from our experiences in this industry specifically to translate them to, it's important to know when to move fast or when to move slow, right? It's important to know when to push the other side or whether to give, right? To pull back. Our job is one that requires us to be like highly intuitive, highly perceptive, extremely adaptable, and of course, just really good communicators. And the example I think that we have this week is like with our contingent buyer, we helped him get under offer, under contract, and through due diligence for this particular property very quickly, which is, was good for the seller on the other side at that time and also good for our buyer. But now that the sale of his relinquished property is slower than we expected, our role has shifted. And it's really now about finessing the timelines, managing the expectations on all sides, and keeping relationships intact so we can hopefully continue to move forward and buy him enough time for his agent, his selling agent or listing agent on the other side to do her job and for the Portland market to show up the way we know it will eventually.
And our client PSA is real estate right now feels like Simon Says, move fast, slow down, sit tight. And there's a rhythm to it that is not always obvious from the outside. And when I say that, when you're not engrossed in real estate day in and day out like we are. What we want to tell you buyers out there is trust that even when it feels like nothing is happening, your team, people like Sarah and I, are behind the scenes working on your behalf. We're navigating the emotional, financial, and strategic parts, all while we're keeping your best interests at the forefront. It can feel uncomfortable. It sometimes can feel slow, but just know that things are happening behind the scenes, and when the timing is right, things will happen.
Yeah. I like to say sometimes no news is good news, especially in certain times throughout our transactions. So I think the most important piece there is just trust who you're working with and ask good questions. So moving on to our highs and lows of the week. Highlight for us, for me, we are back in the same town. We were supposed to be in the same room today, but we're not. Or actually yesterday when we were doing this, we're not supposed to be in the same room today. It's my day off. And fully reconnected. For me, it's just such a reminder of how well we work together and how much more powerful we are when we're aligned, energized, and building with intention. We do really well in all aspects, right? Working remotely for us works well, but there's just something about the energy when you're together. And that's the highlight of my week, just squeezing my business partner in the flesh.
Oh, likewise. It's been so fun to be back in the office and be in our beautiful space, which we'll talk about in a second. And just reconnect on all the things and see our colleagues. And it's just been great. So wonderful week. However, every week there's a highlight and a low light. So this week, we had our first seller cancel their listing with us. And this was an interesting one because I think Sarah started working with them when I feel like I was on vacation. I don't know. Anyways, there were all of these like really detailed questions, and like it's totally fine to be detailed. We got nothing against that. But just for me, I saw some red flags with these sellers from the beginning, and I was very grateful for Sarah to have the patience to deal with these particular clients. And that's actually what we do. Like, we both have our styles. We both mesh well with different types of people. And so sometimes we either one of us will take the lead with a certain client. And in this case, Sarah took the lead with these clients. Then it was time for Sarah to take a break because it was spring break and she was moving and her kids were off school, and like everyone deserves a break. And I've been gallivanting around the world. I covered for Sarah during spring break. However, I was not fully caught up on everything. And so totally own that. But it was my time to deal with them. And during that same week, I was training a brand new virtual assistant. And yeah, like we made a few mistakes. And guess what? These sellers caught every single one of them. And they had zero patience or allowance for, or grace essentially for us in this situation. And they were sticklers about everything. And we can deal with that. Like we will own it when we make a mistake. Absolutely. And heads up, y'all, we are human. We are not robots. We are not perfect. But we fix our stuff. We get it done. So yeah, that was essentially what contributed to these sellers canceling their listing on us. And they wanted perfection, and they had, honestly, I think, unrealistic expectations. So here's what we learned, you guys. This is the best part. Number one, it's really important for us when we are taking time off to give more structure to the handoff. Like lesson learned, absolutely going to do that. And also just acknowledging that life is busy and sometimes things get missed or dropped, but we pick them up and we fix them. The other really important takeaway that I'm super excited about on this experience is we decided that we are going to be choosy about the sellers we work with. And we are not going to shove aside the red flags that we see early on. And we're going to be honest with each other about who we do and don't want to work with. And how does that take shape? Essentially, it's us creating buyer and seller avatars with a checklist of qualities and styles that we work really well with, and a checklist of red flags that we have had experience with that we don't work very well with, and being honest and choosy about who we work with in the future, coming to these listing presentations and buyer intake meetings from a position of strength of, we'll work with you if you are a good fit with us. Simple as that. Or we can pass you off to a colleague who we trust, who might be a better fit for you.
I love it. Yeah. I think the most important thing to point out from any low light that we have or any negative experience that we have is it's just so important for us to take a step back and learn from these experiences. And we always are open with each other and ask questions about like, how can we fix this? How can we do better next time? And we've done just that already. Like we've seriously already taken all the action steps to mitigate and improve our system so this won't happen again in the future. And I'm going to be honest, like this was a relief. Like yes, it's always sad when you think you have a good relationship with somebody and you whatever, you've put in the time and someone decides you're not for them. That's a little sad and that's always a little heart-wrenching. And that is certainly why this was the low light of the week. But it also came with a sense of knowing and relief and just knowing that this is actually the right thing to have happen. I'm all about closing doors to open up new ones or clearing space to bring in what better serves us and what's more aligned with what we're here for. Also grateful for that in a sense too.
And that's also what we're grateful for this week, is attracting clients who align with us, who truly get us, understand how we operate, recognize that we are not robots. And if they want robots, they can hire them. And yeah, I think yesterday was such a great example of this. We had a wonderful day back in the office with our full brokerage team and our favorite lending team. And that was just so rewarding. And we both learned so much that we will drop some knowledge for you on a future podcast about some super cool lending things that we learned. And we met with two awesome sets of clients. And P.S., our dream client decided to list 2 homes with us yesterday. So we may have lost 1 listing, but we got 2 in return, and with a client that is proven to be exactly our style, and yeah, just a joy to work with.
Yeah. So our laugh of the week, the funniest thing, at least the thing that I had to laugh at myself at this week, was I rearranged our office again. I wish we were there right now to show you, but we're not. I move furniture around like some people move, spreadsheets and numbers around, right? Is it OCD? I don't know. Or really, am I just in pursuit of the perfect feng shui for our office? We'll let you guys decide, but I've now officially moved our office around about 3 times since I think even Suzanne's been gone. It's perfect now for a little while, as perfect as this little office space can be. I guess we have a few little things to move around still, but here we go, guys. It's just my life. I get bored easy and I move things around. So that's just who I am.
And I love it. And it looks so good. And it makes the best environment for bringing clients and industry partners into our office. So yeah, if you're in town, you should definitely come in and check it out and sit around the beautiful money-making table with us.
And our cry of the week. Yeah, I cried a lot this week, but probably what opened the floodgates and was like the start to all the feelings of the week is when our sellers canceled on us. And even when it's the right move, it still stings. It still hurts. Like I talked about, it's hard not to take a job that we're so passionate about and put a lot of our energy and time and emotion into. It's hard not to take it personally when you realize that you might have misread a relationship. So I did take it to heart. I am offended. I was disappointed, but as we talked about, we turn lemons into lemonade and we carry these lessons forward and are just always in growth mode, and we make it better for ourselves and for you who want to work with us and who we are truly aligned with.
For sure. Lots of tears this week, tears of joy and tears of change.
Yeah, all good. So into our personal investing and portfolio updates. For me, appraisal just happened on my one St. Louis fourplex that I've got under contract. I'm about 20 days out from closing now if all continues to go smoothly. I think the appraisal went well. I think that's the last time I'm going to have to let any of these folks into the building to bug our tenants. Also, at our other building, stage 1 of repairs finally started in this unit that's been hanging out trash for a long time, and that's step 1 towards getting that one listed and off our books too. Also, just last week, our renters moved into our Northeast Bend house, and I'm so excited about this sweet family. And so far, so good with that. I couldn't have asked for a better set of tenants there. In my Northwest Bend house, we've got flooring finally going in our main level or our middle level, and finally getting all the beds back on the same level and hopefully reclaiming our bedroom from our 2 small children and starting to get some better nights of sleep as a result.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Like we said, it's like camping, and then it's, oh, wow, we have this whole other level of our house. Like your house is going to feel so big once you like expand into it, even though it's smaller than your old house.
I know. We've been joking with this apartment. It truly feels like the most like we've ever been in Hawaii before, because we're living in this 1-bedroom apartment with access to the outdoors and like the birds and the water. And we're like, okay, we can close our eyes and imagine in this 1-bedroom apartment that we're in Hawaii.
Oh, I love that. Yes. So good, Sarah. Okay. Update for me. One of my Central Oregon long-term rentals is coming vacant at the end of May. And I'm currently weighing whether I want to sell it and 1031 exchange into something else, or if I'm just going to rent it again. So yeah, decisions to make on that one. Also, we went up to our Portland property this last weekend, and we still get mail there sometimes. So we saw a notice that was stating that our renters insurance, our tenant renters insurance had been canceled as of like February because we hadn't been there in a while. And that's a lease violation. That's actually a really big deal. So we had our property manager check in on not only those tenants, but all of our tenants to make sure and get proof of their renter's insurance, or they will be issuing a lease violation. And we can talk about why this is important on another podcast, but just know if you are a landlord, generally your boilerplate lease contract requires renter's insurance, and folks got to keep that stuff up, and you should always be listed as additional insured so that you get these notices, because otherwise you have no way of keeping track whether your tenants have renter's insurance or not. Also, I am doing a private money lending deal with a very trusted partner. However, due to the structure of the deal, I ended up getting pushed from second lien position on this property to fourth lien position, and that just didn't sit right with me. So I made a phone call to the borrower and I said, hey, is there an opportunity for cross collateralization, which essentially means, can I put a lien on something else that you own that I can get a higher lien position, first or second? And he wasn't comfortable with that, which I understand. He's got other partners on those deals and it can be a little messy to bring in somebody else. But he was like, let me think about this and I'll get back to you. An hour later, he called me and he was like, actually, I can put you in whatever lien position I want, except for first. So these things are negotiable. So I got put back to second position and other folks are now behind me. So what that means is essentially, if this borrower defaults, I'm the second person that will get paid when the home goes to foreclosure. You definitely want to be first, ideally. I'm okay being second in this situation. Yeah, so that one is interesting. We'll talk more about that in future episodes. And then also, I met a great referral partner in Florida who will be selling my mother-in-law's home. And I just had the greatest conversation with her yesterday. I love how she approached our conversation. She established her value on the phone in 2 minutes and made it very clear that she doesn't work with everybody. And that's exactly what Sarah and I came to our own conclusion of this week. And really just appreciated the 42 years of experience that this agent had and was able to communicate quickly and humbly on the phone, and also standing her ground and saying, I work with buyers who listen to me, or work with sellers who listen to me, and this is how I operate. And it didn't come off as rude, it came off as confident, and I totally appreciated that.
So good. So good. Okay, guys, time to start to wrap this up for the day, and some of our actionable takeaways and final thoughts of the day. Contingent offers can work, but guys, they require flexibility, strong communication, and trust on all sides. Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes buyers got to sell before they can buy again, and it's just the position that they're in. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works if you've got the right team behind you.
So the next takeaway is that the market is in flux. And we talked about that at length, about why and what that means. And for buyers and sellers, it means you need to be nimble and you need to have realistic expectations. It's our job to pull those expectations out of you, because sometimes you may have expectations you don't even know yourself, you just have them. So that's our job. And it's also really important to be strategic in these types of markets as well. So it's not something that's super predictable, the market currently, and that's why we're here to guide you. And final takeaway is, whether you are flipping, house hacking, 1031 exchanging, it absolutely pays to work with professionals who understand and come up with creative solutions, because when the market is not, when it's not as predictable and ordinary as it has been at times, you gotta think outside the box. And not all realtors are created equal. Not everyone knows about alternative financing techniques and has the resources and partnerships that we do with lenders and investors who can get really cool things done quickly in shifting markets.
Yes. And guys, here we go. If you are enjoying our podcast, please, this is the time where we ask you to hit subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who you know loves real estate. Remember to DM us on Best Life Bend and at Suzanne Rose Moore on Instagram, and just tell us what other topics you want us to cover. Maybe we'll do it.
Absolutely. You should be subscribed to our investor newsletter where we send out all kinds of great info about the market, properties for sale, good investments. We send that out every single week. And then our monthly newsletter is a little bit more detailed about what's going on with the market. And you should totally come to our next meetup, which is, if you're watching this in real time, it is on Thursday, April 17th, all about buying at auction with a local investor who has flipped more than 400 homes, and many of those he bought at auction. So you can always grab a time to meet with us on our calendar, whether you're in person here in Central Oregon or somewhere else like Thailand. I met someone from Thailand who watched our YouTube videos last week. We will have all of these links for you in the show notes, and we would love to meet with you and help you. And our goal is to help each other, all of our clients, and our community create more passive income in our lives through real estate investments. So let's do this together.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next week with more behind the scenes real estate investing stories.
All right. Bye, everyone.